Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, I have a unique guest for you, not our typical guest. One, he's male. We don't have all that many male coaches on here, but we do occasionally and appreciate them very much. So today I'd like to introduce Dr. Stefan Zavalin. I hope I got that. Yay.
You totally got it.
Oh, cool. He's a movement mentor driven to change desk work culture. Despite losing his vision in graduate school, he started a company called Love to Move, where he mentors organizations and companies to adapting company culture to improve productivity and health. You can clean that up when you go. I know that was a little awkward. The dream, evolve the current work model so people no longer have to choose between work and health. Stefan aims to make virtual services accessible to all to help this cultural shift. Since starting on his mission, Stefan has written a book called Sit Less. The link will be in the show notes. And he has given an awesome TED Talk, which I watched. It was inspirational for sure, on the same subject. In Stefan's free time, he likes to write songs on piano and guitar, critique a good cup of coffee, I need one, and play board games with his wife and friends. So Stefan, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's exciting. I love talking about this, and I understand that a lot of times, we even were talking about this before, that the energy might be low on these kind of subjects, but I tend to be the bright ball of energy, not even my words, somebody else that even after everything happened to me, they were like, well, how are you still just this bright little ball of energy? Can't help it. It's the way I am.
I love that when people have that innate character, because life is already pretty bumpy and lots of struggles. So if you can bring a little light to it, it just makes it so much easier, for sure. All right, well, let's start and dig in, because I know you have your own personal trauma that you stated you were willing to share so my audience could connect with you. So go ahead and just share what you're comfortable sharing with about that.
Sure. I'll start it relatively far back, but not too far back. So in about undergrad, I was finishing up my degree in kinesiology, and my parents said, hey, you should go to grad school. They were very academic. My dad was a theoretical physicist. My mom's an engineer. So smart family. To add to the stereotype, well, I was born in Russia. We moved from Russia. So Russian physicist, Russian engineer. Yeah. So they were thinking, you have to go to grad school. I had no idea what to do with kinesiology. And as I looked around, I found physical therapy. The reason this is slightly important is by the time that I applied to everything and got in, I really only got into one university. And there was this kind of moment of where my mom was saying, maybe you should take a gap year, maybe. And I said, no, this feels right. I need to go here. That's the place that is going to take me. And it felt like family. Unlike any of the other schools, this was the school that felt like family. And so I went, and within the first semester, I started developing a little light sensitivity in my eye. Wasn't sure what it was. Went to the doctor. They just said, oh, looks like you got a little scrape on there. I was wearing these hard contacts. Okay, you got a little scrape on the eye. Maybe there's a little bacteria in there. Here's an antibiotic. Antibiotic was $150, which for a college student that's borrowing all his money, I was like, this better be an amazing antibiotic. And it was this tiny little vial. Maybe it had like 5 drops in it, which very disheartening to that point. Didn't work. So I went back. They said, okay, sorry, it's a virus. We were wrong. I think it's a virus. Okay. Great. They put me on medication there. Didn't work. Then they effectively pumped me up but my eye full of, I should say, steroids, which just decreased the inflammation. So we basically said, we're not sure what the problem is. Let's cover up the symptoms. And that seemed to fix it for a couple months until it came back full force where nothing was touching it, nothing was doing it to help. Even the steroids were not really doing anything. And I went into a completely different specialist and found out that it was a parasite that was in my eye. And this parasite is in tap water in Philadelphia or many other cities. I didn't go to any exotic location. Before anybody freaks out and doesn't go to Philadelphia or drink their water, no. It's nothing like that. It was the combination of the fact that there was a contact lens that created a small cut on the eye. The water got into it, and then the contact lens covered the cut. So our eye heals incredibly quickly. And while the lens was covering it, it healed over the cut. So then the tears couldn't get to it because the enzymes in our tears kill all of this stuff. So before people freak out, because they normally do, and they go like, I'm never going to Philadelphia or the Northeast ever again. No, it's nothing like that. It's just a lot of things happened in that order. And that's where the journey really, really starts, because they had to effectively, the trauma started right away from that first visit of going in and finding out it was a parasite, because they have to take a culture. And it was this interesting thing of where the doctors apologizing to you while they're doing the procedure, which was not something I've experienced. They basically, to take a biopsy, I'm sorry, anybody who has eye issues, trigger warning here, but they have to scrape off a portion of your eye, of the outer portion, which they numb you for the process. And so while I'm sitting there, I'm going, thank you, you're helping me, you're so wonderful, I really appreciate that. And meanwhile, the doctor's going, you're not going to thank me later. Like, I'm sorry, but we really have to do this. And I found out later, that's when the pain really started of it all. Luckily, the eye heals relatively quickly. The problem with the parasite, and the whole reason I bring all this up, is the parasite has an interesting life cycle. It can either be active, at which point it's very easy to take care of, or it can be cocooned. And in this case, this is a single-celled organism. So it's not as if there's just one. There's a bunch of little ones all throughout there. And you don't know which one they're in. If they're cocooned, medication doesn't touch them, and they can stay cocooned up to 90 days. So you have to keep doing whatever it is that you're doing. And so the whole thing basically came to when I was doing 3 drops of diluted bleach effectively every single hour, even throughout the night, 24 hours, where I couldn't get enough sleep for more than 45 minutes at a time. And so we were just trying to get through this. And that was obviously the hardest part. Luckily, my parents flew out and helped and supported me, and that was the big part of it. And to cap off that kind of part of the story is, eventually we came to a point where we had to do a transplant of the eye. And this was a scary moment of, you don't know if the 90 days has passed yet. Do you just do the transplant and give fresh food to the parasite? Or do you just hope that it's all gone and then you're okay? You can't know, unfortunately. The only way is to do another biopsy. At that point, I was not in any shape to do that again. And we did it. Luckily, everything worked out. And I thought, okay, it's past me. I can go back to school. It's going to be all right. Because at that point, I was not in school because I couldn't tolerate any kind of light whatsoever. And it's interesting that throughout that point, and even with the surgeries to come, movement was my escape for a lot of these things. Because I was in Philadelphia, middle of the night, I would get out and just pace around the block and walk around the block until I was exhausted, and then pass out on the pillow where I could. Ironically, after every surgery that I've ever had, they always tell you can't exercise. So I end up going, can I stand up out of a chair? And they go, yes. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that 100 times. All right, great. But I'm not exercising. I'm standing up out of a chair. It worked. Luckily, I didn't do anything bad to my eye as a result. But what ended up cascading from all of that experience is then, because of all the trauma and everything, all the medications, I developed cataract. So I had to have cataract surgery, which that's always been a really fun thing, because I get to talk to some older individuals and they're talking about, oh, I need to get cataract surgery. I go, don't worry, it's not that bad. And they look at me like, how do you know? You couldn't possibly know if you've had. So, and then I went back to school. And this was the part where I brought up the school before, is because they welcomed me in and they were incredibly accommodating in that sense. Sure, I had to take the times off here and there, and I had to restart basically with the previous class, but everybody was incredibly accommodating. And I was just barely lucky to where it was about a year and I got to finish all of my actual coursework before the next thing happened. And the next thing was everything sort of caught up. And the eye started developing a lot of, because at that point, the eye went back to, I can see, I can drive, I can do things. And that's when the pressure built up, and basically I had nerve damage. And the issue with nerve damage is you can't correct for it. No glasses, nothing is going to correct for nerve damage. That's what glaucoma people a lot of times say, ooh, glaucoma is pressure in the eye. It's how we measure nerve damage, but really glaucoma is that it's the damage to the optic nerve. The issue is, what I kind of failed to mention at the beginning, is the parasite got my one good eye. My other eye was not really developed from birth. Half the optic nerve wasn't developed. So at this point, and this was a really interesting from a trauma perspective identity shift of where in the coming years, I had to shift from thinking, ooh, left is good eye, right is bad eye, to completely flip-flopping it and now relying on that eye that I always told myself, oh, it's a bad eye. It was always called the lazy eye, and on all of these things. And so it finally hit home when eventually a couple years ago, even though we were there, but it's very interesting how the medical system works. I finally got the document of you are legally blind. And it's that kind of identity. But now, anytime somebody wants to put a contact lens in, yesterday, a doctor wanted to put a contact lens in, and I'm going, I'm okay. Please no. I don't need this in my eye. And even though I know logically that it would be completely fine, it's still just that terrifying thing. So that, I think that was up to there. I don't know if I missed anything.
Well, I wouldn't know because I didn't know your story before, but it sounds like it was a beast of a time for you, and I'm glad that you're out on the other side now. And so what do you do to help see now?
Great question. And so this is the beauty of living in the 21st century, and especially where we are, is certain things are harder, but there's other things where it's a silver lining and a blessing. So technology is great because a lot of things can be read out to me. You can zoom in super far. My wife doesn't have to wear a lot of makeup because I can't really tell. But the double-edged sword of that is also when she does put on makeup and she really tries, and I may not notice. And I go, it's not personal. I don't see it. I can look straight at you and I just, well, it's nothing. I want to notice. I truly do. But I like to say that everybody's a beautiful blur, because they're a blur to me. But so technology is fantastic in that way. Now we just recently moved to Los Angeles, and now we have public transit a lot easier. Before we lived in Nashville, not great public transit, to be honest. And now I can actually get around. I can walk places. Even though I'm legally blind, I can really easily kind of pass off as I'm not, just because I have general awareness because of all the movement that I've done, I think. And so that makes it easier. Where I really found it to be interesting, of all places, is the TED Talk was a secret weapon in a way. So something people may not know is that TED Talks are scripted. So every single word is entirely scripted. You have to write your script, you have to submit your script, get it approved, and then you read your script. You're not really allowed to ad lib when you're on stage. So in order to practice for it, a lot of speakers, and I was in kind of a cohort of all the people that were going to be speaking on that day, even a week before, they were standing there practicing with their scripts in hand, looking down whenever they missed something. I can't do that because I'm not going to be able to read the script in my hands. So I had to memorize it way ahead of time and before. And because of that, I got to give a way better talk because I was focusing on so much of the other stuff than that. Now, sure, the actual writing of the talk and the seeing it on the screen and zooming in and typing, retyping, typos are my nightmare. But that part might be hard. And especially with the book, like we said, that writing part is hard. I've tried the speech to text. It's horrible. It makes mistakes all the time. You have to go through and double check it anyway. So luckily my wife is an editor, so she got to edit.
Oh, that was a bright move on your part.
I know, right?
Really great.
It's a smart thing. But so you kind of find those ways of what is good, what is bad. And it's interesting. I've never really thought about it this way, but not to push anybody in any way or opinion. We're vegan. Do with that information what you will. But a lot of times people go, how did you switch? What was the thing? That's so hard. You limit yourself so much. And the thing I say about that is I always go, it is if you think about all the things you can't eat. Right. I think of all the things I can still eat. So it's similarly with the vision is I try not to think about, well, I can't do all of this. I instead go, look at all the things I still can do. And can do differently and better and have a different perspective because it now gives me a different appreciation for, say, Instagram and TikTok, where a lot of videos now in short form that people might see, they have text on them. I hate that. I can't read it. I just skip. I go, nope. So I refuse to make content like that myself because I go, nope, no, thank you. I would like to read out everything that it says because anybody else who is out there who has to pause, zoom way in, it's a chore. So it's you kind of a back and forth with that.
Great. What are your ideas for people that are making content that would help people that are struggling with their sight or any other needs that they may have?
Well, and this is tough because you have this fine line between people, at least from the content that I'm seeing, where they make content and they may not like being on camera very much. They may not like speaking on camera very much. And they have a nice long paragraph that they want to say. They don't want to stumble over it, and they want it to be 7 seconds because that's the new thing the algorithm may want. So you're trying to condense all this stuff here, and you think that it's too much work for you to actually say it on camera. So there's a couple of things. All of the Instagram and TikTok both have now a text-to-speech function. TikTok even has one where it will sing whatever text it is. And I've made a video with that where it like the AI puts a little song to it and then it sings whatever you put in. And it can be actually really, really fun. But that way it does it for you. You don't have to do a single thing. You don't even have to be on camera if you don't want to. So that can be helpful. And some of those videos do amazingly well where they just have them read out the text. Now, do you have to do it for all of them? Because I understand they can sometimes, throw off the feel. Maybe you have some music with it and then a robotic voice reading over it doesn't sound great. Okay, how can you condense it? How can you make it just a couple words instead of a giant paragraph? Because a couple words, I'll suffer through a couple words. But a paragraph, you've lost me. I'm gone. Unless my wife is nearby, then I go, what does this say? So you can also force your followers to get spouses that will read things for them. That's what I'm saying.
Excellent idea. I'm down with that for sure. Okay, so I had a great question and then it left my head. So I'm going to see if I can pop it back up. So I don't have an editor. What would also be good is a video editor in your home. That would be really helpful. Okay, so I guess, is there a connection between the parasite and losing part of your sight? I don't want to say your whole sight because you can see a little bit, right? Is that the right way to say it? I know you're legally blind.
Yeah. And it's funny, and I'll tiny little side note, which is just because we're on this topic. A lot of times people don't know of should I say blind, should I say visually impaired? To me, it's this. Personally, I don't even know how to identify myself. I am identified as legally blind, but I'll go to people and I'll go, I'm blind. Like, I'm legally blind. There's a piece of paper that says it with a signature of medical diagnosis. And people go, okay, but you're not really blind. You can still see, not in the sense they're demeaning me or my abilities, but in the sense that they don't understand what blind means, because people go, blind means black, nothing. You can't, nada, absolutely nothing that you can see. So I go, okay, I'm visually impaired. The other thing that happens with visually impaired is people go, so do you need glasses? I'm like, I can never explain where I am.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, in a simple, I'm like, it always just feels like in either case, I have to explain where I am there, and that it's not just a simple, I can't see anything, or I just need some glasses or something like that. Because inevitably I go, the other one, I'm low vision. You go, I'm low vision. They're like, oh, yeah. I also have to wear glasses. And you go, no, not quite, but yeah. So there is that little piece. In terms of the parasite itself didn't necessarily impact the vision. It's more so that all of the things that followed afterwards, it was actually the trauma, the physical trauma from all of the medications and everything that partially caused the cataract, and then the extra surgeries on top of that of removing the cataract that then caused the increased pressure and all that kind of stuff. So, but at the same time, interestingly enough, they had to do multiple transplants in the eye, and I now like to joke around that I'm never alone, because I've technically got 3 other people's pieces in my eye. I've got 2 pieces of an eye and 1 piece of a heart. Surgery is crazy and interesting, but that's the way that it is.
Wow,
it's wild, right?
I wonder how many people can say that about their eyes. It's
true. And there's plenty. My one thing about it, and maybe this also contributes to the whole ball of energy that we started off with at the beginning, is that people go, well, what's the one thing that I don't know if it's like regret or whatever about the entire process? And truthfully, the biggest thing, because I know that I can't change it. I completely understand that I can't change it. And it's meaningless for me to say, oh, that first doctor, I should have sued him to bits and gotten millions. Sure, I could say all those things. And we tried, honestly, because he wasn't going to lose money. It's malpractice insurance. So but it was too late. Anyway, my biggest quote unquote regret is that people didn't make enough jokes. People took it too seriously sometimes. And I understand that I'm not going to be like a lot of other trauma survivors or whatever else it might be. But there was this point where everybody thought that they had to walk on eggshells. And I was trying to make jokes and everybody else thought it was just like too serious of a topic. But at the same time, if I'm making jokes, you're going to be open to making jokes. And that was always kind of my nature around it. So that was the only interesting thing. Somebody once called me a cyclops, which I was like, that's not that great of a joke. Not that it was mean or anything like that. I was wearing an eye patch all the time and I was going around and I was like, you can do better. We can figure out something funnier than that. That's just lazy writing. Come on. And look, let me be very clear here. I understand there are going to be people out there that they will find that offensive, and that's not the way to approach them. I'm just saying that humor in that case was the way that I wanted to deal with it, and I wanted people to kind of have fun with it as well and not be quite as serious about it. That's why it worked for me personally.
Yeah, and it was
I'm not saying do that to everybody. Please don't.
Right, and it was about you, so it's perfectly fine. And I read recently that humor, and this surprised me, because we hear in my field as a therapist that humor is a coping mechanism, and there's this flavor that maybe it's not always appropriate, right? And I recently read, though, that humor is a mature coping skill. And I really love that. So now I'm mature all of a sudden. So I use humor a lot. I'm a big fan. I tell people therapy is for crying and laughing, because that's what life is. There's hard times and there's good times. And sometimes you got to laugh at the hard time in order to get through. And it's okay, So, yeah.
I really like that. I like the crying and laughing because it's really, I had my bout with therapy, and my wife's and I argument is that we just didn't find, or I didn't find, a good enough therapist, because I kept on thinking, I do a lot of personal work and self-improvement work. And so a lot of times what the therapists were telling me, I was like, yeah, I already do that. That's already something that I'm kind of working on. And so it's possible that I just didn't find the right therapist. So I think that was the part for me, is that sometimes you need to shop around, isn't the right word. That sounds bad. But you need to interact with different therapists to actually understand if they are really a fit for you, which can sometimes be hard with the current medical system, to be fair.
Absolutely.
But, yeah.
And finding someone that will just call you back sometimes is hard because there's such a need and not enough of us. So, yeah. Okay, so tell me about your path from having this trauma to being funny to being someone that's crazy about standing, not sitting.
Sure.
Yeah. Didn't I say that so eloquently? I'm telling you.
So I've loved movement my whole life, but there was definitely a part where it dropped out and I didn't notice it quite as much when I went into music. That happened in middle school. We had gym class and they would just drag out a giant cardboard box. It was full of balls, rackets, hoops, jump ropes, what have you. And the teacher would just go, yep, just do whatever you want, and walk away for the hour. And so the kids were left to their own devices. We do whatever we want with it. Now sounds like heaven, because I'm thinking I could just go play by myself. I'll be fine. At that age, this was about 5th, 6th grade. You're still developing those kind of social norms, which clique do I belong to, all these things. So inevitably you play whatever the majority wants to play. So it ended up always being football. And I was like, well, can't we play kickball or soccer or foursquare or something else? And that was very rare. And so I said, okay, I hate gym. Gym is stupid. I don't want to go to gym class anymore. And I found a loophole that if you started playing in orchestra, you didn't have to go to gym class. I said, all right, that's what I'm going to do. And so I went heavily into music. I actually started off my undergraduate in music because of how much music I was playing all the way throughout high school. And movement went by the wayside. Ironically, I picked the one instrument in orchestra that you have to play standing up, which is the upright bass. So maybe there was still some subconscious thing in there about standing that was still with me. But inevitably it came back up in undergrad and everything, where I realized I love movement. I enjoy working out. And so that's kind of been with me the entire time. I wanted to open a gym, but then my parents said grad school, like we talked about at the beginning. And so I said, okay, all right, physical therapy. I guess that's what I'll do. Fell in love with that and helping people actually move. And the interesting thing there is that you're in a class of 60 people. They're all bright, smart, inspired individuals who know how good movement is, how bad sitting is, and we're sitting all day, regardless. But I thought, no, it's okay. This is school. I'm going to get into the clinic. It's going to be totally different. And so I got into the clinic. And at this point, even when I did my rotation with the clinic and then got my first job with the clinic, I wasn't driving. At that point, I could still use reading glasses to read a little bit, but that quickly went out the window, as well as the vision decreased. And so there was this component of, I want to help people move. And then inevitably, as the years went on, me practicing in the clinic, I realized I'm just helping fix symptoms. I'm not actually helping with the problem. Mm-hmm. And then I would also do the whole thing of going, oh, how many steps do I get in a day? I'm about all the time. I'm a physical therapist. I'm walking back and forth. I'm standing. It's like 5,000 steps, which is not bad. But I was thinking, oh, surely I'm getting 12, 15,000. I'm super active. And I was starting to realize, oh, there might be more of an issue here. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, I realized I love presenting and I love talking to people and I love making it entertaining and fun. And so by the time I got my final diagnosis of like, okay, you are legally blind and it's done, it was very interesting because another layer of interesting trauma, by that point, I did not notice it. I didn't see this. I thought, no, this is just how it is. When you are trying to work hard as a therapist, things are exhausting. You come home at 7 or 8 p.m. and then you're up at 3 or 4 in the morning finishing notes before your 7 a.m. client that you have to go in to see. That's just how you do it, and you're just going to have to deal with it. It was the vision, to a large degree, that I wasn't able to type things up and I wasn't able to do the documentation. But I was telling myself, nope, you can do it, you can push through, it's going to be fine. By the time I finally got this paper, I was saying, oh, okay, I now have a piece of paper I can come to my employer with and say, okay, guys, I need accommodations. I know your other therapists can do it. I can't. I'm blind. I need help. And there was a meeting, and I thought, perfect. They're having a meeting with me one-on-one with the manager and the higher up, and that's going to be perfect. I'm going to say, hey, guys, I have this document. I need your help. This is perfect. And so we sit down, and they go, you're not meeting your numbers. We're putting you on a plan, and if you don't meet the plan, we're going to have to let you go. And I went, well, I have a piece of paper. I'm blind. I need help. And I will give credit to them. Those two individuals said, oh, okay, this changes everything. Let's see what we can figure out with accommodations. And then we'll kind of restart the plan to make sure to test your plan with accommodations if you can meet these numbers. When we started talking about the accommodations, the accommodations person for the company started saying things along the line of, meet the numbers, then we'll give you accommodations. Which I was going, but I can't meet the numbers because you don't give me accommodations. That makes no sense. So we were in this email back and forth. And in the middle of all that, I got COVID. So it was kind of the universe being like, you're done with this. Of course I did. Of course, right? Of course, that would be the entirety, which was very ironic because also while having COVID, I proposed to my girlfriend, who's now my wife. A lot of things happened, and I had complications with COVID. I had extra heart pain that lasted for a long time. So if I stood for more than 15 minutes, heart pain, had to sit down. I can't be in the clinic. You're up on your feet the majority of the day. That's just not going to work. So I had to take extra time off. And honestly, by the time that was over, I just kind of said, I'm done. I emailed them again and I said, hey, if I come back, can you just give me accommodations or something? And they were like, no, you're still going to be on your month trial period. And then we'll go through. And I said, you know what? I'm done. This is not it. And that was whatever you might believe in the universe, anything. That was, to me, I think that the sign of like, get out, go do your own thing. Yeah. And so that was the thing that just, I got out and I just started my own business. And then, within that year, book, TED Talk, just going all for it. So it was that kind of kick that just pushed everything towards the movement. And the beautiful part about it is that in terms of vision and all that, I can still see if a person's standing or not standing when they're on camera, right? So we're doing everything virtually. I can still create very interesting slides and presentations. Some would say different than what usually people want, because I'm not going to put a bunch of words on my slides, right? That's going to be very different. And So it's given me a different perspective in that way. And then we talk so much about mindset and habits as well when it comes to movement, because it's not just about going to the gym. And that was the other thing that really kicked me out of the clinic, is when I realized that all the sitting that we're doing is not reversed with going to the gym, that it needs to be a reduction in sitting. And that's my big thing that I talk about, is the difference between sitting less and moving more. And that's why the first book is called Sit Less. Because that's the mindset that we need to think about. And I've translated that to most all things in my life, this aspect of we think we need to do more and more of the good. We need to be more productive. We need to eat more healthy foods, whatever it might be. And we don't look at doing less of the bad instead, of being less ineffective, of eating less of the possible junk. And so naturally, better foods or better habits will come in. And it's not saying they're going to be perfect and wonderful, but it's just a little bit more scalable that way than always saying, I force myself, I need to focus on this. And so that's been helpful. That was a really roundabout way of answering that entire question, but that's how
That's beautiful.
it transitioned into all of the movement and things that I talk about.
Yeah, so I have a very concrete question next, and then we'll get more inspirational maybe.
Yeah.
My concrete question is about, as we mentioned, I think before the call, the pandemic, more people working at home, more people sitting a lot. I think you mentioned people rolling out of bed and hopping onto their chair, and then they're stuck to their chair, right? So people who are very used to sitting all day, and some of us have bought little standing desks and we use them for 2 minutes and then we sit down again. What's a good plan for someone that's really like maybe not very active, and they know they need to stand more, but it feels very intimidating, or it feels like they can't do it? Do you have a step-by-step or ideas on how to work their way up to it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I like to start people off with two things to kind of start shifting about what it is that you're doing. One that's you can grab and go immediately, very short term, and the other one is the one that you kind of really can work on and develop into more of a practice. So the quick and easy one is movement breaks, and this is the one that people inevitably jump to, and they go, "How often are we supposed to do this?" And from the scientific literature, every 20 to 30 minutes. From actual practice, don't do that. Just don't do that. If you're somebody that sits for an hour and a half and then you're going to start getting up every 20 to 30 minutes, your workflow is going to get interrupted. You're going to get tired of thinking, what in the world is it that I have to do every time I get up? And then it's just going to go by the wayside. Many of us have tried to do that and eventually it doesn't work. So if you are a person that sits at 2 hours, 3 hours without ever getting up, start with an hour and a half. Start with something in between that, okay, and then work your way down. Maybe you'll stop at 45 minutes. Maybe you'll never get to the 20, 30 minutes. It's still going to be so much better. So that's kind of that first piece. What's coupled with it is everybody goes, what am I supposed to do? Ideally, just stand up and do anything besides sitting. It does not have to be exercise. That's one of my biggest things. It does not have to be exercise. You can get a cup of water, go to the bathroom, do a load of laundry if you're working from home. That's all movement, and that's all not sitting. So don't think that it has to be squats and push-ups that I have to do in the middle of it. Not at all. Just break up your sitting. So that's that first easy piece that you can kind of go with. I, at one point, even had a list of things of chores or exercises, because I like to do exercises, that I have next to my desk. So as soon as I stood up, there's my list. I know my next thing to do, as opposed to standing up and going, well, I heard this guy on a podcast. He said I should stand up. This is stupid. I'm sitting down. This is not me. So that way you're setting yourself up for success with those. The long-term piece is really changing how we're doing work. So I'll give you a perfect example. For me, I do all of my Zoom calls standing up, as you see even now. And over the last year, I wear the proud mantle of only sitting down for 2 Zoom calls, because I was training for a half marathon and I tore my calf. And so I had to sit down for that little portion while I was recovering. But other than that, I stand up for all of them. I do not have a standing desk. And I'm actually hesitant about getting one, because I like telling people that I don't have a standing desk and yet I stand up for all of it. Part of that is because my camera, my lights, my bookshelves, everything in this room is set up to where standing Zoom calls are easier than sitting Zoom calls. So it would take more energy for me to do it the other way. And now I'm intentionally setting up my entire area to where standing is a little bit easier. I'm not saying you need to be standing all the time. That's the other part where it's sit less, not sit none, or never sit.
Right.
Because I always think people are going to get me, like paparazzis are going to get me sitting down. You see, he sits. Yes, I sit down. It's okay. It's fine to sit. It's just we're reducing total time of sitting. Right. So it might be just, okay, I always check my emails in the morning for 15 minutes. If you have a laptop, can you take it and put it on a kitchen counter and just do it that way? You just took away 15 minutes of sitting. That's okay. That's where you start. With all of these, you have to start small and then build it up. You don't have to stand for the whole meeting. Maybe you stand for 5 minutes of the meeting. And then, all right, go ahead and sit down. So it's finding the ways you can kind of adapt things. And when it comes to intention, one final little example and story that I like is the trash can test that I now call it. And it's, or waste bin or paper bin, whatever bin you like to call it. When you're sitting and you usually have something under your desk. If it's directly under your desk, you tend to kind of just throw something in there. If you take it and put it on the outside of your desk, you'll have to do a little lean to the side or a little shuffle over. So you've got now a little bit more movement. And then if you put it all the way across the room, now you either have to try to make a free throw, which if you're me, you'll probably miss because I'm blind. I told you the blind jokes were coming. And then you might have to get up and go pick it up, put it in, whatever it might be, right? Now, I'm not saying you have to always have whatever your paper bin is across the room. But it's this example of what is the intention for putting something somewhere. And if you try to put certain things in places with movement as the intention, as opposed to exclusively sitting efficiency as intention, it's an easy way for you to get more and more movement throughout the day. So those are the two big things. Little movement breaks and change intention. Yeah.
No, that was your best tip, really. Yeah. Because I don't have a trash can in my office. And it's like, it feels so good when I work on Zoom from most days 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Either with clients or in meetings. And so when I move now to go find a trash can, like I got a little pile of papers here. I got to go throw in the trash during my next break. And so when I move now, just do something like that, it feels good. I'm like, how weird is it that I can tell just moving a little bit feels so good? It's because of the sitting for so long. So I like the trash one. Yeah. So trash, go get a drink, go to the bathroom. I full clothes now, standing up. So I like that tip. I got to probably do those. Where's your list of exercises? Is that on your webpage for what people can do?
No, I don't have I mean, I can easily make one. I hesitate to make a list like that because you never know what people specifically need. It's more of if people go, yeah, I know my calves are tight. A lot of people go, yeah, I've gotten a physical therapist. It never worked because I didn't do the exercises. It's okay. We're human. I once gave myself a list of exercises as a physical therapist, gave myself as if I was a client, a list of exercises to do. Didn't do them. So, human, we're all human to a degree.
Just do something. Yeah.
But in terms of exercise, yeah, it's maybe something that you like to do. Maybe it's a squat that you like to do. I like hanging from a pull-up bar, but I have a pull-up bar and I can do that. Maybe
I don't like that. I don't like that. No.
Exactly. That's fine, right? It could be just a stretch. Maybe it is literally just stretching up and doing a couple twists. Maybe it's getting into a lunge. There's just so many variations. Just giving you a short list doesn't really make sense. And the other piece about not wanting to give a list of exercises is if people think it has to be exercise, the motivation is not going to go there. So for me, one of my favorite things is I'm in charge of sweeping and mopping of the entire house, which I hear you. Why is the blind guy in charge of that? That's questionable on the cleanliness of the house. Sure, I'll say it because it's true. I mess up all the time. But that's movement. So I might do a room in between my calls or something, or in between sitting. So I can very easily use chores as part of that exercise, or even going, if you have a dog, that's a great way for you to get more movement. If you don't have a dog, get a dog. It's a great way for you to get movement. But with the exercises, they're great, they're good, but I'm more thinking if they're exercises you like to do, because if you're feeling that you're forcing yourself to do it, and then on top of exercising, you have to do chores around the house as well, then it just feels like too much. You're adding more and more onto your plate.
Just have a dance party.
I love dancing. That's a great, I actually use dancing sometimes as my workout, as my cardio.
Very fun. Yeah. Okay. So I could talk to you all day, but we got to start wrapping up. So picture this, the listener today tuning in is low energy, maybe depressed, maybe anxious, got a lot on their plate. what words of wisdom do you have for them to at least get started with the things that you talked about today?
Well, first off, I've got three. First off, good job, because you're listening already to this, which means that you're looking for answers and you're at least marginally curious, which is that has to be the first step in those things. If you're ready to start getting out of whatever that low energy state for you is. The second part is, while everything starts with you and you're the only one that can really change yourself, asking for help is great. Now, asking for help, it seems like a big thing of where you go, help me. No, even tiny things of saying, hey, would you mind bringing me a drink? Or would you mind just finding somebody else? Because it's also that piece of somebody else caring for you, just bringing that in there. And it's just that one little thing of reaching out and connecting with people. Because even with the blindness initially, I was like, oh, nobody needs to know, it's going to be fine. And then when I realized that it was, okay, this is just my identity now, it's very interesting how people actually receive you and talk to you. And also you get to find out who your friends are and who your friends aren't with that compassion part of the thing.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, and this is specifically to the getting started and how you do it. Whatever you think that you're going to do, whatever you, let's take the movement example that we had. You say, ooh, okay, I heard the two things. I'm going to start getting up every 45 minutes. No, I'm going to push myself. I'm going to do every 45 minutes. I'm going to get up. Don't do that. Cut it in half. Do hour and a half, do an hour. We always want to start way bigger, and then we push ourselves too much. I would so much rather you start tiny, tiny, small, and then stay frequent and consistent with it the entire time. It's going to be better if you want to do workouts, a 5-minute workout 5 times throughout the week than a 25-minute workout 1 time a week. Start smaller than you think you need to start, but that will make it so small that you don't even hesitate to go, oh, that's easy. I can do that. Great. Do it. Perfect. And then build up from there. Because just in my experience, people they think it's small, but it's truly not small. And then you take off. And dear listener, I wish you the absolute very best, because you absolutely got this.
Thank you so much. Really appreciated you being here with us today.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.